Hello everybody, I'm Kamaleao, welcome to my channel. World of Warplanes. The game is a little bit older, it came out I think 4 years ago or something like that. But when it first came out, I tried it and boy, that game had problems. It was actually quite bad. At least I thought so. The controls were problematic, they felt wonky and clunky and yeah, just not smooth at all. The map sizes were usually a bit too small. It felt like every plane is just sitting on top of each other more or less, and yeah, that felt just weird and made movement and positioning kind of unimportant because there were planes just everywhere. The plane variety just wasn't really there. As far as I remember, you just had fighters and other types of fighters, more or less. And they all felt the same. There were a significant number of bugs that I used to run into, I remember that. It didn't really run smoothly. So there were often frame drops and other problems and connection issues. And that is just very bad for an online kind of more or less FPS game. Well, it's not first person and it's not a shooter, but you get my drift. And what I personally really didn't like was the one death and you were out of the fight system. I mean, I understand it in World of Warships and World of Tanks I never really played. I'm not that much into... I don't know. I actually like tanks, but I never got into that game. I have no idea why. But I did like World of Warships and played it for a while, and there I understood it and it made more sense to me. But with World of Warplanes, some of these planes are extremely fragile. And you could really get knocked out in seconds. Very, very few seconds. And that just felt extremely punishing and not that much fun. Now, things are a little bit different. I read about them changing it in the update 2.0, which came out as far as I think this year, like maybe 2 months ago, something like that. And they changed a lot for the far better. There are now more planes and more plane types. There are specific bombers, and the planes actually fly and feel more different than they used to. You have larger map sizes, which really helps, because now you have individual pockets of fighting and you can move out of a pocket of fighting. Yeah, and it makes sense to do that sometimes. Maneuvering makes sense. Not always, but sometimes it makes sense to just to position yourself in a good way to join a fight. And you can do that because, well, the planes are not all sitting on top of each other and you're not getting shot at constantly as a result of that. So far I have run into 0 bugs. That doesn't mean that there are no bugs in the game, of course. That's always a thing that's dependent on a lot of variables. And I haven't played a ton of it so far. But that's already far better than what I remember. So that's nice. The whole game runs smoother. Again, mileage may vary. That always depends a little bit on what system you're running and stuff like that. But for me personally, it runs far better. It looks better. That's just great. Then they have added a respawn system. I'm not going to go into too much detail how it works, but essentially you are not necessarily out the first time you die, especially if you die early on to something. So you can respawn for a little bit of time in the game, and then things get worse, and after a while the respawning stops, but there is a system in it, and that feels great to me. So it's not as punishing as it used to be. The controls also feel better to me. They're very intuitive, even with mouse and keyboard. I have no idea what exactly they changed, but it does feel better for me. And that's great. Now, if you play this game, it's still very, very obvious it's not a flight sim. It is still very arcadey, but very easy to jump into and just play, which is awesome. I mean, it very much depends on what you want. If you're looking for a very realistic flight sim, then this game is not for you, and I don't think that it ever will be. But if you're just in the mood for, hey, I want to take a plane and shoot up some people, this is by now really an option, and a very good one, I think. I have no idea about long-term motivation, how long this game stays interesting. A lot of that also has to do, I think, with how much you like the progression system in all the World of War or whatever games. I personally despise that progression system, but other people like it, so that's a very subjective thing. But then again, the game is free to play, so long-term motivation isn't really that much of a risk factor here, because you're not paying anything, at least not up front. So I can just tell you, if you have bad memories of World of Warplanes back in the day, or if you never even tried it because of the stuff you read about it, or heard about it, or saw about it, which I cannot blame you, the game was really bad back then, give it another try. It has become really good. So yeah, I'm going to go back and shoot at some planes. My name is Kaleo. Have a good time.